Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship floating outside Luna Station's viewport. 3 months had passed since first contact, and nothing had gone the way anyone expected. The ship was beautiful in a strange way, with smooth curves and glowing blue lines running along its silver hull. But Jake knew it wasn't here for a friendly visit. "Admiral Carter to the command center," the speaker crackled. Jake straightened his uniform and walked quickly through the station's corridors. Other officers moved past him with worried faces. Everyone knew something big was about to happen. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the center of the command room, her gray hair pulled back tight. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days, probably because she hadn't. The weight of first contact with aliens had fallen on her shoulders, and it was crushing her. "Captain Morrison, thank you for coming," she said without looking away from the main screen. "We're about to receive a message from the Galactic Hegemony. I want you here as a witness." Jake nodded and took his place beside her. The Galactic Hegemony was what the aliens called themselves. 12 different species working together, ruling over hundreds of worlds. They had technology that made Earth's best weapons look like stone tools. The screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared, tall and thin with golden skin and large black eyes. This was Ambassador Veltar of the Zalani, one of the leading species in the hegemony. When he spoke, his words came through a translation device that made his voice sound cold and mechanical. "People of Earth," Veltar began, "I speak for the Galactic Hegemony Council. For 50,000 years, we have brought order and peace to this galaxy. We have encountered 847 species, and all have found their place within our structure." Jake felt his stomach tighten. This didn't sound like the start of a friendship. "Your species shows promise," the alien continued. "But you are young and lack guidance. You have wars, poverty, and waste resources fighting each other instead of working together. We offer you a better way." Admiral Carter's jaw clenched. Jake could see her hands forming fists. "The Hegemony Council has decided to extend membership to humanity. You will be given territory appropriate to your development level. Your leaders will be educated in proper governance. Your military will be dissolved and replaced with hegemony peacekeepers. In return, you will have protection, advanced technology, and guidance toward a peaceful future." The alien paused, his black eyes seeming to look directly at them through the screen. "This offer comes with a time limit. You have 72 hours to accept. If you refuse, we will implement corrective measures to ensure compliance. We have never needed to use force against a reasonable species. We trust humanity will prove equally reasonable." The screen went dark. The command room stayed silent for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Carter spoke. "Get me President Brooks on a secure line. Priority Alpha." While they waited for the connection, Jake stared out at the alien ship. It looked so peaceful just floating there, but he knew it contained enough firepower to destroy Luna Station with a single shot. How many more ships were out there, waiting? President Ryan Brooks appeared on the screen within minutes. He looked exactly how Jake felt, scared but trying not to show it. "Admiral Carter, I assume you received the same message we did on Earth?" "Yes, sir. They want us to surrender everything that makes us human. Our independence, our military, our right to govern ourselves. That's how I read it too," Brooks said. "I'm calling an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. We need to decide how to respond. Sir, with respect, what's to decide?" Jake found himself speaking before he realized it. Both the Admiral and President looked at him. "Sorry, sir, but they're asking us to give up everything we are. There's no negotiation. Here, they want slaves, not allies." President Brooks nodded slowly. "That's my feeling as well, Captain. But we need to consider the reality of our situation. They have technology we can't match. Our best estimates say they could destroy every major city on Earth within hours. Maybe, Admiral Carter said. But that assumes we just sit here and let them do it. Over the next 2 days, Jake watched as Earth's leaders held meeting after meeting. Defense Secretary Kate Sullivan flew to Luna Station to see the alien ship herself. Dr. Ben Parker, Earth's top expert on alien biology, gave briefing after briefing about what they had learned about the 12 species in the hegemony. Every species we've studied follows the same pattern, Parker explained to a room full of military officers. They fight until losses become too high, then they negotiate. They're very logical about warfare. When the cost becomes greater than the benefit, they stop fighting. That makes sense, someone said. Why would you keep fighting a war you can't win? Parker looked uncomfortable. The thing is, they expect us to think the same way. Their entire strategy is based on showing overwhelming force, then offering reasonable terms. They think we'll see we can't win and accept their offer. Jake raised his hand. What if we don't? Don't what? Don't think the same way they do. What if we're not reasonable by their standards? Parker frowned. I'm not sure I understand. They've conquered 847 species using the same method. Show force, make demands, accept surrender when the enemy sees they can't win. But what if we don't surrender? What if we fight even when we know we'll lose? The room went quiet. Admiral Carter looked at Jake with new interest. Captain Morrison raises an important point, she said. We're assuming they understand us because we're beginning to understand them. But maybe they don't understand us at all. The final meeting took place on Earth, in the White House Situation Room. Jake watched on a secure link from Luna Station as President Brooks, Defense Secretary Sullivan, and 24 other leaders made the most important decision in human history. The vote is unanimous, Brooks announced. We reject the hegemony's ultimatum. We will not surrender our independence to anyone, regardless of their technology or numbers. Admiral Carter smiled for the first time in days. Sir, should I inform Ambassador Valtar of our decision? No need, Brooks said. I'll tell him myself. 20 minutes later, every major communication system on Earth and Luna broadcast the same message. President Brooks sat behind his desk, looking calm despite the magnitude of what he was about to say. To the Galactic Hegemony and Ambassador Valtar, this is President Ryan Brooks speaking for all of humanity. We have considered your offer of membership in your organization. We respectfully decline. Jake felt his heart racing as Brooks continued. Humanity values its independence above all else. We would rather face destruction as free people than live as servants, no matter how comfortable that servitude might be. We know you have superior technology and numbers. We know you could destroy us. But we also know something you apparently don't understand about humans. Brooks leaned forward, his voice growing stronger. We don't surrender. Not to anyone, not for any reason. If you want Earth, you'll have to take it from our dead hands. And I promise you this. We'll make sure the cost is higher than you ever imagined. The message ended. Jake looked out at the alien ship, still floating peacefully in the darkness. Soon he knew that peace would be shattered forever. What the aliens didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that humans had lived their entire history under the threat of total destruction. Nuclear weapons had taught them that. Some things were worth mutual annihilation. The concept of reasonable surrender was as foreign to humanity as their willingness to choose death over slavery was to the aliens. The war was about to begin, and neither side truly understood what they were fighting. Commander Alex Turner watched the alien fleet approach Mars through his ship's main screen. 15 massive vessels moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming silver against the red planet's surface. His own small flotilla looked pathetic. In comparison, 6 destroyers and 2 cruisers against an armada that could glass an entire planet. "Sir, they're hailing us," Lieutenant Kim Walsh reported from the communication station. "Put them through." The face that appeared on screen was different from Ambassador Veltar. This alien had blue-gray skin and forearms, each ending in 3 long fingers. Admiral Corvex of the Zalani 4th Fleet spoke in the same mechanical translation voice they had heard before. "Human Commander, I am Admiral Corvex. Your government has made an unwise choice. Stand down your vessels and prepare to be escorted to a detention facility. Your species will be given another chance to make the correct decision." Alex looked around his bridge. His crew of 23 men and women stared back at him with determined faces. They all knew what was about to happen. "Admiral Corvex, this is Commander Alex Turner of the Earth Defense Force. I have orders to defend this system against all hostile forces. You are not welcome here." The alien's large eyes seemed to narrow. "Commander Turner, you have 8 small ships against 15 vessels, each 3 times your size. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your engines cannot outrun our pursuit. Craft, this is not bravery. It is stupidity." "Maybe," Alex said, "but it's our kind of stupidity." The first shots came from the alien fleet. Beams of pure energy lanced across space, striking the destroyer Courage. The ship's shields flared and died instantly. The second shot punched through the hull, and the Courage exploded in a ball of fire and metal. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Alex ordered. "Make them pay for every inch." The human ships spread out, using Mars gravity to slingshot around the planet. They couldn't match the aliens' firepower, but they could be unpredictable. The destroyer Defiance, commanded by Captain Emma Davis, dove straight at the alien flagship, while the others provided covering fire. Emma's ship took hit after hit. Her shields were gone. Her hull was breaching in 6 places, and half her crew was dead or dying. But she kept flying straight at the enemy command ship. "Captain Davis, your vessel is critically damaged." Admiral Corvex's voice came over the comm. "Surrender now, and we will rescue your survivors." Emma looked at what was left of her bridge crew. 3 people still alive out of 25. She could surrender. The aliens weren't lying. They would save her people. But she thought about Earth, about her daughter who was only 8 years old, about what kind of world that little girl would inherit if humanity gave up now. "Admiral Corvex," Emma said, "here's your rescue." She hit the emergency burn on all engines and rammed the Defiance directly into the alien flagship's engine core. Both ships disappeared in a blinding explosion that lit up the Martian sky. "Admiral, Corvex survived because he was on the bridge, far from the engines. But he lost 800 crew members and his primary command vessel. More importantly, he lost something he hadn't expected to lose, his understanding of how this war would go." "Why?" he asked his tactical officer. "Her ship was finished. We offered to save her crew. Why did she choose death?" The tactical officer, a member of the logical Vorthic species, had no answer. "Perhaps it was a malfunction, Admiral. A desperate accident." But Corvex knew better. He had seen Captain Davis's face in those final moments. She had chosen to die, chosen to take his ship with her, chosen mutual destruction over survival. It made no sense. Back on Earth, General Chris Morgan received the battle reports in his underground command bunker. 3 human ships destroyed, 1 alien flagship eliminated, the remaining human vessels retreating toward Jupiter. By any reasonable measure, it was a crushing defeat. "Sir," his aide Lieutenant Bob Fisher said, "the aliens are broadcasting on all frequencies. They want to discuss terms for our surrender." "Tell them we're not interested," Morgan replied. "Activate Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega was humanity's last desperate plan. If they couldn't win with conventional weapons, they would make victory as costly as possible for the enemy. Every human ship, every space station, every military base had been rigged with self-destruct charges. Not to surrender when defeat was certain, but to take as many aliens with them as possible, Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically in her laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. Her team had been developing new weapons since the first alien contact, but nothing they created could match the enemy's technology. Now she realized they had been thinking about the problem wrong. "We don't need better weapons," she told her assistant Dr. Carl Brooks. "We need weapons they won't expect us to use." "I don't understand." Amy pulled up the tactical reports from Mars. "Look at this. Captain Davis could have surrendered. The aliens offered to save her crew, but she chose to ram their ship instead." "Why do you think she did that?" Carl frowned. "Desperation? Madness?" "No," Amy said. "Strategy. She understood something the aliens don't. We're not trying to win this war. We're trying to make them lose it." Over the next 6 months, the pattern repeated across the solar system. Human forces fought impossible battles and chose mutual destruction over defeat. The mining station on Europa, faced with certain capture, detonated its fusion reactors rather than let the aliens take it. The crew of the research vessel Explorer, surrounded by enemy ships near Saturn, flew directly into the planet's rings and triggered an avalanche of ice and rock that destroyed 2 alien cruisers. Each time, the aliens broadcast the same offer: surrender and live. Each time, humans chose death over defeat. Admiral Corvex found himself commanding a fleet that grew smaller with every victory. His crews, used to fighting logical enemies who surrendered when defeat was inevitable, began to show signs of stress and fear. They were winning every battle, but losing ships they shouldn't lose, facing an enemy that followed no reasonable pattern of warfare. "Supreme Coordinator," he reported to the Hegemony Council on a secure transmission, "we have secured three of the system's outer planets, but at a cost of 12 vessels and over 4,000 crew members. The humans refuse all offers of surrender and consistently choose mutual destruction tactics." Supreme Coordinator Thanvel's face appeared on the screen, his golden features showing confusion. "Admiral, explain mutual destruction tactics. This term is not in our military database. They attack in ways that guarantee their own death while maximizing damage to our forces. A human captain will sacrifice his entire crew to destroy a single enemy ship, even when surrender would save lives on both sides. This makes no strategic sense," War Master Zefter interjected. "What do they gain from such waste?" Corvex had been asking himself the same question for months. "I believe, honored leaders, that they gain something we don't understand. They seem to value something more than survival itself." The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. Another human attack was incoming, this time targeting the alien base on Ganymede. Colonel Sam Rodriguez led a suicide mission with 40 volunteers, flying primitive nuclear rockets straight at the heavily defended facility. The aliens shot down 38 of the rockets. The remaining 2 reached their target and detonated, with enough force to crack the moon's crust. The alien base was completely destroyed, along with the 300 personnel inside. All 40 human attackers died in the assault. Corvex stared at the tactical display showing the destroyed base. By every rule of warfare he had ever learned, this should not have happened. The humans had no chance of success, no hope of survival, and no strategic gain from the attack. Yet they had done it anyway. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Corvex began to feel something he had never experienced in battle: fear. Not fear of death, which was always possible in war, but fear of an enemy that didn't follow any logical pattern, that couldn't be reasoned with or predicted or understood. The humans were losing every engagement, but they were making victory cost more than the hegemony had ever paid for anything. More disturbing, they seemed to welcome the cost, to embrace the mutual destruction that horrified every civilized species in the galaxy. Corvex sent another report to the Council, but this time his message was different. Honored leaders, he wrote, I request additional fleets and a complete review of our strategy. We are not fighting a normal war. We are fighting an enemy that treats defeat and victory as the same thing. I do not know how to win against such an opponent. On Earth, General Morgan read the intercepted alien communications with grim satisfaction. The enemy was confused, afraid, and starting to make mistakes. They had expected a quick victory followed by reasonable surrender. Instead, they were getting the one thing no logical species could understand, an enemy willing to choose mutual annihilation over any form of defeat. The war was just beginning, and humanity was teaching the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Dr. Nina Hughes woke up in a cell that looked nothing like any prison she had ever seen. The walls were smooth white curves with no sharp corners, and soft blue light came from somewhere she couldn't identify. She had been captured 3 days ago when her research ship was taken near Jupiter. Now she was apparently on an alien vessel, though she had no idea why they had kept her alive. A section of the wall slid away without sound, and an alien walked in. This one was different from the golden-skinned Zelani she had seen in the broadcasts. It had gray-blue skin, large silver eyes, and moved with careful, measured steps. When it spoke, the translation device made its voice sound almost musical. Dr. Hughes, I am Kalinara of the Vorthic. I am what you would call a psychologist. I study the minds of different species. Nina sat up on the simple bed. Let me guess. You want to know why we won't surrender. That is exactly what I want to know. Kalinara settled into a chair that seemed to grow from the floor as it sat down. In 50,000 years, the hegemony has encountered 847 species. All followed predictable patterns of behavior. They fought until losses became unacceptable and negotiated terms. Your species does not follow this pattern. Maybe because we're not like other species. Please explain. Nina thought about how to make an alien understand human nature. How many of the 847 species you conquered had nuclear weapons? Nuclear weapons are common. 63 species developed them during their industrial phase. And how many of those species lived under the threat of total destruction for generations? Kalinara's silver eyes seemed to brighten. I do not understand. Nuclear weapons provide deterrence through the threat of retaliation. No species would actually use them in a way that destroys everything. Nina almost laughed. That's where you're wrong. Humans didn't just develop nuclear weapons. We built enough of them to destroy our entire planet 10 times over. We pointed them at each other for decades, always knowing that one mistake, one miscalculation, one crazy leader could end everything. But that would be ... illogical. Suicide. Yes, it would be. But it would also be mutual suicide. If one side destroyed the other, they would be destroyed in return. We call it mutually assured destruction. The idea that if we can't both win, we'll both lose. Kalinara stood up and began pacing, its movement becoming more agitated. This concept is not in our databases. No rational species would accept such a philosophy. Rational? Nina shook her head. Maybe we're not rational by your standards, but we survived because of that irrationality. Our enemies knew that attacking us meant everyone dies, so nobody attacked. But surely your leaders would not actually. And their own civilization ... Our leaders? Some of them, probably not. But our people? Our soldiers? Dr. Kalinara, you've been fighting us for 8 months. How many times have your forces offered surrender terms? In every engagement. Standard protocol is to offer mercy to defeated enemies. And how many humans have accepted? The alien stopped pacing. None, none, Nina repeated. Not one ship, not one base, not one soldier. We've all chosen death over surrender. What does that tell you about us? Meanwhile, Captain Greg Thompson stood on the bridge of the defense station orbiting Europa. Through the viewports, he could see the approaching hegemony fleet, 30 ships this time, the largest force they had sent against a single target. His station had a crew of 800 people and enough firepower to maybe damage a few enemy vessels before being destroyed. Sir, incoming transmission from the fleet commander. Communications Officer Jane Miller reported. The now familiar voice of Admiral Corvex filled the bridge. Human Commander, this is Admiral Corvex of the Hegemony 4th Fleet. Your position cannot be defended. Surrender now, and your people will be relocated safely to a detention facility. Greg looked around his bridge. Good people, all of them. Engineers, soldiers, scientists who had volunteered for this assignment, knowing they might never go home. They deserved better than to die in a hopeless battle, but they also deserved better than to live as slaves. Admiral Corvex, this is Captain Greg Thompson. I've got a counter-offer for you. I am listening. Turn around and leave this system. If you do, nobody has to die today. There was a pause. Captain Thompson, you have one station against 30 warships. You cannot seriously believe you can defeat us. Defeat you? Admiral, I don't need to defeat you. I just need to make sure that taking this station costs you more than it's worth. Greg nodded to his engineering officer, Lieutenant Dave Wilson. Wilson's hands moved over his console, activating systems that had been installed in secret over the past 6 months. Admiral, are you familiar with the concept of a stellar engineering project? Another pause. What do you mean? Europa sits in Jupiter's radiation belt, where charged particles from the planet's magnetic field create enormous energy potential. My engineers have been working on a way to tap that energy. We've built a network of field generators that can channel Jupiter's entire magnetic field through this station. Greg could almost hear the alien thinking. That would destroy your station. Oh, it would do much more than that. The energy release would create an electromagnetic pulse that would fry every electronic system within 10 million kilometers. Your ship's shields, weapons, life support, everything would shut down. You'd all drift dead in space. You would die as well. Yes, we would. That's the point, Admiral. We can't beat you, but we can make sure you don't beat us either. Mutual destruction. It's a very human concept. On his ship, Admiral Corvex stared at the tactical display. His science officer confirmed that such a device was theoretically possible, and the energy readings from the human station suggested they had actually built it. Sir, his tactical officer said, we could destroy the station before they activate their weapon. And if we're wrong? If they've automated the system? If destroying the station triggers it anyway? Corvex felt something he had never experienced before. Helplessness in the face of an enemy, willing to choose mutual annihilation. Captain Thompson, he said finally, you would kill 800 of your own people to destroy 30 of our ships? Admiral, let me ask you something. In your 50,000 years of conquest, how many species have you faced that were willing to blow up their own sun to stop you? That is impossible. No species would ... Would what? Commit suicide to win a war? Admiral, 3 months ago, Captain Emma Davis flew her ship directly into yours to kill 800 of your people. 2 months ago, Colonel Sam Rodriguez led 40 people on a mission that cracked a moon in half. Last month, the crew of Mining Station 7 chose to detonate their fusion reactors rather than let you capture them. Greg's voice grew harder. We're not like the other species you've conquered, Admiral. We don't fight to win. We fight to make. Sure, our enemies lose, And if we all have to die to accomplish that, well, that's a price we're willing to pay. Back in her cell, Nina continued her conversation with Kalinara. The alien psychologist seemed deeply disturbed by what it was learning about human nature. Dr. Hughes, help me understand. Your species developed the capability to destroy itself, then used that capability as a defensive strategy? Not just defensive, offensive too. The threat of mutual destruction was our most powerful weapon. It kept the peace between major powers for decades. But the cost? The cost was living every day knowing that civilization could end in 30 minutes. Our children grew up with that knowledge. Our leaders made decisions knowing that one mistake could kill everyone. We lived with existential dread as a constant companion. Kalinara sat down heavily. This explains much. You're warriors. Don't fear death because they have lived their entire lives under its shadow. More than that, Nina said. We learned that some things are worse than death. Slavery, for instance, the loss of freedom, being forced to live under someone else's rules, even if those rules are reasonable. But surely cooperation is better. And destruction, ... Cooperation requires equal partners. What you're offering isn't cooperation. It's surrender with better terms. The alien was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Hughes, I must ask you something that may seem strange. If your species faced a choice between total annihilation and peaceful surrender, which would you choose? Nina didn't hesitate. Annihilation. Even knowing that surrender would preserve your lives, your culture, your children's future? Our children's future as what? Servants? Slaves? People who gave up their freedom because they were afraid to die? That's not a future worth preserving. But they would be alive. Dr. Kalinara, let me tell you about a human phrase. Give me liberty or give me death. We've believed that for centuries. Some things are worth dying for. Some things are worth everyone dying for. The alien scientist stood up abruptly. I must report to the council. This conversation has been ... enlightening. After Kalinara left, Nina sat alone in her cell and thought about the conversation. She had tried to explain the unexplainable, how a species could choose death over defeat, mutual destruction over reasonable surrender. She wondered if the alien had understood, or if such understanding was impossible for a species that had never lived under the shadow of total annihilation. Meanwhile, at Europa, Captain Thompson waited for Admiral Corvex's response. His weapon was real. He really could channel Jupiter's magnetic field through the station and create an electromagnetic pulse that would cripple the alien fleet. He really would kill everyone, including his own crew, rather than surrender. The question was whether the aliens understood that he meant it. Captain Thompson, Corvex's voice finally came over the comm. I am withdrawing my fleet. Greg felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that his people wouldn't die today. Disappointment that the aliens were learning to take human threats seriously. As the enemy ships turned away, he realized that word of this confrontation would spread through the hegemony. They were beginning to understand that humans meant what they said about mutual destruction. The war was changing. The aliens were learning that humanity couldn't be conquered by conventional means because humans didn't follow conventional logic. They were willing to destroy everything rather than accept defeat, and that willingness was becoming their greatest weapon. In the depths of space, the hegemony fleet retreated, carrying with them a new and terrifying understanding of their enemy. Humanity wasn't just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely different, something that challenged every assumption about rational behavior and survival instinct. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had known for generations, that the threat of mutual destruction was the most powerful force in the universe. War Master Zefter stood before the assembled Hegemony Council, his forearms gesturing at the holographic display showing the Sol system. 12 species representatives watched as he outlined the most massive military operation in galactic history. Honored council members, Zefter began. Admiral Korvex's reports make clear that standard suppression tactics have failed. The humans refuse all reasonable terms and consistently choose mutual destruction over surrender. Therefore, I propose Operation Final Convergence. Supreme Coordinator Thane Vale leaned forward in his golden chair. Explain the parameters, War Master. We will assemble every available fleet, over 400 ships carrying 2 million personnel. The humans will face such overwhelming force that resistance becomes impossible. When faced with certain extinction, even these irrational creatures must finally behave logically. The representatives murmured among themselves. Such a force had never been needed before. It was enough to conquer an entire galactic arm, let alone one small system. The cost will be enormous, observed Council Leader Keth of Avorthic. Pulling so many ships from patrol duties will leave 17 sectors undefended. The cost of failure would be greater, Zefter replied. If word spreads that a single species can resist the hegemony through suicide tactics, other species might attempt similar strategies. This must end decisively. On Earth, President Dan Miller sat in his underground bunker, reading the intelligence reports. President Brooks had died when Luna Station was destroyed in a retaliatory strike 6 months ago, and the burden of leadership had fallen to Miller just as the situation became hopeless. Mr. President, Defense Secretary Kate Sullivan said, "Our long-range sensors confirm it. The largest fleet in recorded history is heading toward Earth. Over 400 ships, arrival estimated in 2 weeks." Miller nodded grimly. He had known this moment would come. The aliens had finally decided to end the war with overwhelming force. Have you briefed Dr. Reed on Operation Final Dawn? Yes, sir. She confirms the system is ready and armed. Dr. Carroll. Reed had taken over Earth's defense sciences after Dr. Foster died in the attack on the Mars Research Facility. What she had created in the past year made every previous human weapon look like a children's toy. Mr. President, Dr. Reed said as she entered the briefing room, I need to confirm your authorization one final time. Operation Final Dawn is not reversible. Once activated, there's no stopping it. Miller looked at the woman who had weaponized humanity's own star. Doctor, explain to me again what will happen. Reed activated a holographic projector showing the Sol system. We've placed gravitational manipulators at key points around the sun. When activated, they will create a cascade effect in the solar core. The star will go nova within 6 hours. And the alien fleet? The nova will destroy every ship within 12 billion kilometers instantly. The gamma-ray burst will sterilize every planet in the system and create a dead zone that will be uninhabitable for 10,000 years, including Earth. Including Earth. Mr. President, if we activate Final Dawn, everyone dies. U.S. them, everyone. It's the ultimate expression of the mutual destruction doctrine. Miller walked to the window and looked up at the sky, knowing that somewhere out there, the largest invasion force in galactic history was approaching his world. Doctor, in your professional opinion, will this work? Will it convince them to leave us alone? Sir, it won't convince them of anything. They'll all be dead. But the message will be clear to every other species in the galaxy. Humanity will choose universal annihilation over surrender. Meanwhile, Captain Victor Hayes commanded the Orbital Defense Platform Endurance, one of the last major installations defending Earth. His crew of 300 people worked frantically to prepare for the coming battle, but everyone knew it was hopeless. 400 alien ships against the dozen remaining human vessels was not a fight. It was an execution. Captain, Communications Officer Lisa Park reported, we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony Fleet. They want to speak with Earth's leadership. Put it through to the President's bunker and give me a copy. The face that appeared on screen belonged to War Master Zephyr himself. The alien's expression was grim, but confident as he delivered what everyone knew would be the final ultimatum. Leaders of Earth, I am War Master Zephyr, Supreme Commander of Hegemony Forces. You face the largest military force ever assembled. 400 ships carrying the finest warriors from 12 species. Further resistance is not brave, it is insane. Victor watched as the alien continued his speech, promising swift victory and merciful treatment for survivors. The same lies they had been telling for over a year. However, Zephyr continued, we acknowledge that your species has unique psychological characteristics. Therefore, I offer terms never before extended to any world. Surrender now, and humanity will be granted autonomous governance of 3 worlds under hegemony protection. Your military will be limited, but not eliminated. Your leaders will be advised, but not replaced. Victor felt his breath catch. These weren't the usual surrender terms. The aliens were offering something approaching real compromise. You have 12 hours to respond, the War Master concluded. After that, we will be forced to implement total suppression protocols. Choose wisely. In his bunker, President Miller listened to his advisors debate the offer. It was more generous than anyone had expected. 3 worlds, limited autonomy. Survival for billions of humans. By any rational measure, it was a good deal. Mr. President, Secretary Sullivan said, this might be our chance. We could save the species, preserve our culture, keep our people alive. Under alien rule, General Morgan replied, limited autonomy means they control everything that matters. We'd be pets in a zoo, but we'd be alive, Dr. Reed pointed out. Our children would have a future. Miller looked around the room at the people who had helped him lead humanity through its darkest hour. Good people, all of them, trying to make an impossible choice. There's something else to consider, he said finally. If we accept this deal, what message does that send to other species the hegemony wants to conquer? But if you just bring enough ships, even humanity will surrender. The room fell silent. They all understood the implications. Humanity had become a symbol of resistance across the galaxy. Other species were watching to see if the infamous humans would finally break. Sir, General Morgan said quietly, there's another way to look at it. We've proven that mutual destruction works as a deterrent. The aliens are offering real concessions because they're afraid of what we might do. Maybe that's enough. Is it? Miller asked. Dr. Reed, if we refuse their offer and activate Final Dawn, what happens to the galaxy? Every species will know that humanity chose death over any form of surrender. They'll understand that we weren't bluffing about mutual destruction. Some species might be inspired to resist future conquest. Others might be horrified and submit immediately to avoid our fate. Miller walked to his desk and activated the quantum communicator that would broadcast his response to every human installation in the system, as well as to the alien fleet. People of Earth, soldiers of humanity, this is President Dan Miller. The aliens have offered us terms for surrender. Better terms than they've ever offered anyone. 3 worlds, limited freedom, survival for our species. He paused, looking directly into the camera. I know many of you are thinking we should take this deal. You're thinking about your families, your children, the billions of people who could live if we just say yes. You're thinking that maybe we've proven our point, that maybe it's time to be reasonable. Captain Hayes watched from the Endurance as his crew gathered around the communication screens. These might be the last words the President ever spoke. But I want you to remember something, Miller continued. We didn't start this war because we were unreasonable. We started it because we refused to give up what makes us human, our freedom, our independence, our right to determine our own fate. His voice grew stronger. The aliens are offering us survival, but not as free people. They're offering us life, but not life worth living. They're offering us a future, but not a future we can be proud of. In the depths of space, War Master Zefter watched the human broadcast with growing unease. Something in the alien leader's tone suggested this would not be the reasonable surrender he had hoped for. "My fellow humans," Miller said, "we have always known this moment would come. The moment when we would have to choose between survival and freedom, between existence and independence, between living as slaves or dying as free people." He looked directly into the camera, his eyes filled with a determination that chilled every alien watching. "I choose freedom. I choose independence. I choose death over slavery for myself and for our entire species. If the price of liberty is extinction, then that's a price worth paying." Miller reached for a control panel that had been installed next to his desk. "War Master Zefter, this is our final answer. Operation Final Dawn is now active. In 6 hours, our sun will go nova. Your fleet, our world, and everything in this system will be destroyed." The president's finger hovered over the activation. "Switch. You wanted to conquer humanity? Congratulations. You get to die with us." He pressed the button dot across the solar system. Gravitational manipulators that had been hidden around the sun for months came online. Deep in the stellar core, carefully calculated distortions began to cascade through the nuclear furnace that had warmed Earth for billions of years. War Master Zefter stared at his tactical displays as his science officers confirmed the impossible. The humans had actually weaponized their own star. In 6 hours, the Sol system would become an expanding sphere of death that would sterilize 12 billion kilometers of space. For the first time in the Telmel hegemony's 50,000-year history, they faced an enemy that had chosen mutual annihilation over any form of surrender. The humans hadn't been bluffing. They really were willing to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. The largest fleet in galactic history found itself trapped in a system with a dying star, facing an enemy that had just guaranteed everyone would lose. War Master Zefter stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display count down to humanity's self-imposed extinction. 5 hours and 37 minutes until the Sol system became an expanding ball of death. His science officers had confirmed it 3 times. The humans had actually done it. They had turned their own star into a weapon that would kill everyone, including themselves. "War Master," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Every species in the hegemony is demanding to know what's happening here." Zefter could imagine the panic spreading through civilized space. News that humanity had chosen mutual annihilation over surrender would terrify every logical species in the galaxy. The very concept challenged everything they understood about survival and warfare. "Sir," his tactical officer said, "should we attempt to evacuate the system? With 400 ships? In 5 hours?" Zefter shook his head. "Even if we started immediately, we couldn't get everyone to safe distance. The gamma-ray burst will travel at light speed. Then what do we do?" Before Zefter could answer, another transmission came from Earth. President Miller appeared on screen, looking calm, despite having just sentenced his entire species to death. "War Master Zefter, this is President Miller. I have a proposal for you. You have activated a stellar cascade that will kill everyone in this system. What proposal could you possibly have?" "Simple. Leave. Take your fleet and go home. If you do, we'll deactivate the cascade." Zefter felt something he had never experienced in a lifetime of warfare: complete confusion. "You would spare yourselves to save us?" "No," Miller said. "We would spare everyone to make a point." "War Master, you came here with the largest fleet in galactic history because you thought overwhelming force would make us reasonable. You were wrong. No amount of force will ever make humanity surrender. The president leaned back in his chair. But we're not monsters. We don't want to die, and we don't want to kill you. We just want you to understand something very important about humans, which is, we mean what we say. When we tell you we'll choose death over slavery, we're not bluffing. When we tell you we'll destroy ourselves rather than submit, we're not making empty threats. We're telling you exactly what we'll do. Zephyr looked at his countdown timer. 5 hours and 21 minutes. And if I refuse to leave, then we all die together. War Master, the choice is yours. You can leave this system with the knowledge that humanity cannot be conquered by any force you can bring against us. Or you can stay and prove that we really will choose mutual annihilation over surrender. You are insane. By your standards? Yes, but we're consistently insane. We've been telling you for over a year that we'd rather die than submit. Today, we prove it. The question is whether you're smart enough to believe us. On the command ship, Zephyr consulted with his senior officers. The humans had created a situation where the only way to defeat them was to die with them. It was the ultimate expression of their mutual destruction philosophy. War Master, his science officer said, if we leave now, the humans win. They get everything they wanted: independence, freedom from our authority, the right to govern themselves. And if we stay, everyone dies. U.S. them, their entire system. It proves nothing except that they weren't lying about choosing annihilation. Zephyr thought about the reports he had received over the past year. Captain Emma Davis ramming her ship into his fleet. Colonel Sam Rodriguez cracking the moon in half. Captain Greg Thompson threatening to channel Jupiter's magnetic field through his station. Every human commander had made the same choice: death over defeat. Communications: connect me to the Hegemony Council. Supreme Coordinator Thane Vel appeared on screen within minutes, his golden features showing strain. War Master, the entire galaxy is watching this situation. What is your status? The humans have activated a stellar cascade that will destroy this entire system in 5 hours. They offer to deactivate it if we withdraw our forces. This is impossible. No species would choose universal suicide. With respect, Coordinator, every report we've received proves otherwise. The humans have consistently chosen mutual destruction over reasonable surrender. They are not bluffing. Thane Vel was quiet for a long moment. War Master, if you withdraw, it sets a precedent that could destroy the hegemony. Other species might attempt similar resistance. Coordinator, if I don't withdraw, we lose 400 ships and 2 million personnel to prove a point. The humans will be dead, but so will we. How does that serve the hegemony? The council leader's image flickered as he consulted with other members. Finally, he returned to the screen. War Master Zephyr, you are authorized to negotiate whatever terms preserve our forces and maintain some measure of hegemony authority. 15 minutes later, Commander Paul Wright received an unexpected transmission aboard the defense platform Endurance. War Master Zephyr's face appeared on screen, but his expression was very different from the confident alien who had demanded surrender 12 hours earlier. Commander Wright, I am prepared to discuss terms. What terms? Paul asked. You've seen our position. We don't negotiate. Perhaps we can find a middle ground. The hegemony withdraws from your system permanently. In exchange, humanity agrees not to expand beyond your current territory without permission. Not good enough. Then what do you want? Paul looked around his bridge at the faces of people who had been prepared to die rather than surrender. We want what we've always wanted. Complete independence. No hegemony authority over human affairs. No restrictions on our expansion. No interference in our government. We want to be left alone. That is ... unprecedented. No species has ever been granted such autonomy. Then we'll be the first. War Master, you have 4 hours and 53 minutes to decide. After that, the choice is out of everyone's hands. The next 4 hours were the most tense in galactic history. The Hegemony Council debated while their largest fleet sat in a system with a dying star. Other species watched in fascination and horror as humanity proved they really would choose universal destruction over any form of surrender. Finally, with 37 minutes left on the countdown, War Master Zefter made the call that would change the galaxy forever. President Miller, this is War Master Zefter. The Hegemony Council accepts your terms. We will withdraw from your system and grant humanity complete independence. We will not interfere in your expansion or governance. We will leave you alone. In exchange for deactivating your stellar cascade. Miller smiled for the first time in months. Done. Dr. Reed, shut it down. Across the solar system, the gravitational manipulators powered down. Deep in the sun's core, the cascade effect was carefully reversed, returning the star to its normal state. Humanity had looked extinction in the face and used it as a negotiating tool. 3 months later, Captain Eric Davis commanded the first human vessel to leave the Sol system since the war began. The ship was small and primitive by galactic standards, but it carried something no other species possessed, the reputation of beings so committed to their principles that they would choose mutual annihilation over compromise. As they passed the boundary of human space, Eric received a transmission from a nearby alien patrol ship. Human vessel, this is Captain Vexilon of the Hegemony Beauregard. You are approaching restricted space. Captain Vexilon, this is Captain Eric Davis of the Earth Vessel Explorer. We are exercising our right to free passage as granted by the Sol Accords. There was a long pause. Understood, Captain Davis. You are cleared to proceed. Please note that several species have requested advance warning of human expansion into their territories. Why? They prefer to relocate their populations before you arrive, as a precautionary measure. Eric almost laughed. The galaxy was now so afraid of human irrationality that entire species would evacuate planets rather than risk conflict with beings who might choose mutual destruction over reasonable surrender. Back on Earth, Dr. Janet Stone worked in her new role as humanity's first xeno-diplomat. Her job was to establish trade relationships with alien species, but she found that most of them were too terrified to negotiate normally. Dr. Stone, her assistant Mark Chun, said, "The Vorthek Collective has agreed to the rare metals trade, but they're demanding that all negotiations be conducted by quantum communication. They don't want any human ships entering their territory. They're afraid we'll blow something up. They're afraid you'll blow everything up." The psychological profile the hegemony distributed describes humans as willing to choose universal annihilation when faced with any form of coercion. Janet shook her head. Humanity had won their independence not through superior firepower or brilliant tactics, but by convincing an entire galaxy that they were too insane to conquer. The threat of mutual destruction, which had kept peace on Earth for generations, had become their greatest diplomatic tool. Years passed, and humanity established itself as the galaxy's most feared and respected species. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they had proven beyond doubt that some things were worth mutual annihilation. Other species studied human psychology, trying to understand how evolution could produce beings capable of such absolute commitment to self-destruction. They found it impossible to comprehend a species that viewed survival and freedom as inseparable concepts. The hegemony still ruled most of the galaxy, but they did so knowing that somewhere in space was a species that would choose universal death over any form of surrender. It changed how they approached every conflict, how they negotiated with every species, how they thought about the very nature of warfare itself. Captain Eric Davis, now Admiral Davis, stood on the bridge of humanity's first deep space exploration vessel 10 years after the war ended. They had encountered dozens of new species, established trade relationships with some, and avoided others entirely. Every alien civilization they met had heard the same story, that humans were the species that had weaponized their own star rather than surrender. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "We're receiving a transmission from a previously unknown species. They call themselves the Kethver, and they want to establish diplomatic relations." "What do they want?" "To hire us." Eric raised an eyebrow. "Hire us for what?" "They're facing invasion by a hegemony splinter group. The Kethver want to know if humans would be willing to consult on defensive strategies." Eric understood immediately. The aliens didn't want human weapons or human soldiers. They wanted to learn how to be so committed to their principles that their enemies would fear mutual destruction more than defeat. "Set course for their homeworld," Eric ordered. "Let's teach them what humanity learned long ago, that the threat of mutual annihilation is the most powerful force in the universe." The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, not because they were monsters, but because they were the only species willing to choose death over defeat, extinction over surrender, mutual annihilation over any form of compromise. In a universe full of logical, reasonable species, humanity had become the ultimate deterrent, too dangerous to conquer, too principled to ignore, and too committed to their freedom to ever truly defeat. They had won their independence by teaching the galaxy that some species would rather watch the universe burn than live on their knees. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.